I'm Brittany, this is Wei Ying, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things and sometimes we read them. Happy 2025, you guys. Welcome to the first stream of the new year. We are picking up Erha, Volume 3. And I apologize for the lateness. And before I start talking about this, general warning, we are very, very spoiler conscious here. We are very aware of spoilers. Please do not place any spoilers in the chat that we have not already gotten to, which means that like what happens in volumes 1 and 2 is fair game, but what we have yet to read should be probably either extremely generalized or given like heavy spoiler warnings. We are the most aware of things that we have not gotten to yet. But stuff in volumes 1 and 2 is more fair game. I say that because the reason I am late is because while I was preparing for this stream, I was, refreshing my memory, as you do. That's what I took the beginning of the day to do. I was like, I need to go back through volumes 1 and 2 so that I can have better memory recall on what specifically has happened so far, because obviously I remember a bunch of stuff, but it's been a couple of months since we picked up Erha. So I was going and getting myself reacquainted, and I could not for the frickin' life of me remember the details of a very important piece of Mo-Run's psyche. I knew that we had gotten to dial in on very specifically why Mo-Run feels this rat's nest of feeling towards Chuaning and sort of why he does that and why he feels that way versus why he then feels so pure about Shimei. I remember we had dialed in on that reason, but I could not remember what the fuck that reason was. And that's slightly important to understanding not just Mo-Run, but Mo-Run and Chuaning's relationship. So I was scrambling to figure out why that was. And fortunately, some lovely people in the Discord chat, that channel that we have for Erha, pointed it out. I think someone like legitimately remembered the page that I had, that was my phone, ignore that I had all those thoughts on. And so I found it again. And it's very sad. I had thought maybe it had something to do with Mo-Run trying to give him a flower when he was young and that going badly, but I couldn't remember the specific thing. And no, so Mo-Run has wrapped up all of his malice and pain from the abuse that he had suffered into Chuaning. And that's the missing puzzle piece that I've been scrambling for the past, really the past like 45 minutes. And then in all my preparation for the stream, I was like, I have to be ready for the stream. I have to be ready. I have to know what this is because I have to do the stream. And then I was like, oh shit, the stream. And now I'm late. So, but I feel like this was an important piece of the backstory. You know? Anywho, we usually read for a couple of hours. We started late, so we are going to go a little bit late. We usually end around 5. But, of course, we will go a little bit beyond that. There's a break around the halfway point, so after about an hour or so, that I usually aim to last at like 10 minutes or less. But you guys have some lovely music to listen to while you wait. And we usually get through about 40 or 50 pages, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. And also, what else? I actually did write down stuff I needed to tell you guys. So I might want to mark that off. In case anybody didn't know, because this is very relevant to our Chinese queerness interests. In case you hadn't heard the happy news, Justice in the Dark is finishing in March. Kinda knock on wood, because we've all been, like, burned before. But literally, Japan is coming in clutch. And Justice in the Dark, which was adapted from the novel by Priest, that had the 8 episodes drop like a year or more ago that never, it's finishing in mid-March. And I'm so damn happy about it that I'm telling this stream that has currently nothing to do with Justice in the Dark. Also, the official translation comes at the end of the year, and I can already tell you I will absolutely be reading it. That was the happy news. I wound up, we are starting volume 3 of Erha today, right? So through some Amazon glitch, because they're supposed to have a thing in there that prevents this from happening, but I wound up with 2 volume 3s of Erha. And so I need to reach out to the couple of people who got this for me because I can't find who specifically gave it to me. But I'm mentioning it now just in case you're in the chat. Please let me know, because if either one of the people who sent me a volume 3 is cool with it, then probably at the end of when we finish volume 3, one of the streams will be a giveaway, and I'll figure out how to do a little giveaway of a volume 3 if either of the people who sent it to me are cool with it, of course. But I thought there was a non-zero chance that you'd be in chat right now. Oh, was it you? Literally the name O. Was it you? Yeah, so if you sent me a volume 3 and you are okay with it being given away later on as we finish the volume, wave your hand and I will figure out how to do that. Yeah, it was O, yeah. Awesome, yeah. And of course, if you're not okay with that, that's totally fine, by the way. This is no pressure. No pressure whatsoever. If you notice like that I'm doing some weird things with like my mouth or something like that, I am in the middle of having a dental procedure done. And it's not quite done yet, but the one that I just had can leave some of your teeth a little bit sensitive. So my bottom row of teeth right now are a bit sensitive, even with just like speaking. So if I'm drinking stuff a little bit more, or if I'm like moving around a little bit more, don't worry. It's just a little residual stuff from some dental work I'm having done. Nothing to worry about. I believe that was it. We had just, at the end of volume 2, met whoever the hell was also reborn. I am torn, as per usual. It could be Taeshangjun, which would be amazing. It could also be OG Shimei, which would be amazing. But it could also be a secret third thing. Like, I don't know. I don't think OG Chuwaning would even do that. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. But you know, danmei, it could always be a secret third thing. But we around here are deeply sus of Shimei. And not gonna lie, I would like to be vindicated. However, if it turns out to be Taeshangjun, that would be absolutely incredible. I will not be disappointed whatsoever. Because that would be immaculate storytelling. Shimei is just... we haven't even started yet. We have plenty of time to get into it. I'm apparently feeling very chatty today. By the way, this is a reaction. I had never read this series before. I have no freaking clue. Not a single idea. I am discovering it potentially as well as you are, because we have a nice, lovely mix of people who have read this before and people who haven't. Spoiler warnings all over the place. If you know of any spoiler warnings that you are sensitive to in terms of content and dark content, please go look them up. I am only just now realizing that I do not have the link down to the spoiler warnings that I usually have in the description of this box. However, I am sure that there are plenty of people in the chat who would be able to find like a non-spoilery tags, content warnings, should somebody need them. We are very helpful around here. Feel free to ask. We are on chapter 89, called This Venerable One's Past Affair with You. Page literally nothing. Hang on. Page 11. These things usually start around page 11. Also, shout out to the cover art as per usual. This is stunning and features lanterns, so you know I'm going to love it. They have yet to make a bad cover, in my opinion. All right. Okay. We can calm down. It's fine. I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention before if we get through these next two volumes, volumes 3 and 4, on time or like in a speedy way, I may just squeeze in volume 5 before we take the next break. Since this is a long series, I'm taking breaks between them just so that we can keep, some fresh stuff being read on the channel, right? Depending on how we get through these next couple of volumes, I may squeeze in a third one. I may squeeze in volume 5 before we take a break. It depends. But I am going to try to do that. So, chapter 89, this venerable one's past affair with you. When Mo Run awoke, it was already bright, and the sun was high in the sky. He rolled over and blinked. To his surprise, Chu Wanning was still fast asleep. Does he remember meeting the guy who was also reborn? And any of that? And the fact that he used, water magic and all that? No, we don't remember that at all. Don't remember why we can't summon our own damn sword. I don't think he even remembers that it was his actual sword, that it was real Bugui. I think he, at the end of the volume 2, he assumed that it was just a fake. I'm carrying a normal amount. Perhaps it was the effect of the tapir fragrance dew, or perhaps it was because of his poor health of late, along with bouts of fitful sleep troubled by dreams, that he was still deep in slumber even at this hour. His back was turned to Mo Run, and long, inky hair spilled loose across pillow and bed, its strands the color of the night. Mo Run eyed him. If the teacher hadn't yet risen, there was no reason for the student to be particularly industrious. The bed was too comfortable. He might as well stay in it a little longer. But just lying there was boring, so Mo Run scooched closer and began to play with Chu Wanning's hair. Chu Wanning's hair always smelled faintly of flowers. Soft as smoke, fine as mist, it was one of Mo Run's favorite things to touch. He combed his fingers through those misty strands. The feel of them, smooth as satin wrapped around his fingers, made his insides tingle. A breeze swept through the window, and the dark, patterned bed curtains drifted gently in its wake. Mo Run narrowed his eyes. Certain parts of him were especially energetic in the morning, and with such a pleasant sensation at his fingertips, one that was so familiar. So he lifted a lock of Chu Wanning's hair to his nose and inhaled. Those long, soft strands called to mind scenes from the bygone past. Since his rebirth, Mo Run had tried his best not to think too much about the more salacious portions of his history with Chu Wanning. But for some reason, this morning, he felt like indulging in reminiscence. See, the really, really paranoid part of my brain wants to be like, oh, for some reason, this morning, after he unknowingly met the other person who's been reborn, I'm like, is that a nod that it's OG Chu Wanning? We theorize a lot around here. His throat felt a little dry. He didn't want to touch Chu Wanning's body anymore, but his hair should be fine. Mo Run closed his eyes and pressed his lips lightly to the inky darkness between his fingers. This inky darkness, also, one of the things that the reborn guy did was increase Mo Run's sense for love and hate to try to help clarify his real feelings, as utterly ambiguous as that is. And I'm wondering if that's like the first time that that's ever happened, because that would also explain the heightened intensity, but it could just be the context that we already know that already justifies the heightened, feelings of love, hate, that kind of battle in Mo Run. That's also explaining the story, but was it also just fucking heightened by this mysterious dude? I told you I was feeling chatty today. I'm so sorry. Scene break. Back then, at Xishang Peak's Wushan Palace, the same inky darkness had fallen around Mo Run like a curtain. He had held that man's slender waist in his hands, the feeling of lean muscle beneath his fingers so different from that of a woman. Chu Wanning straddled Mo Run's hips and worked himself up and down. Hang on. Hang on. It must have hurt. His sharp brows were drawn tightly together, and motes of light glistened in those phoenix eyes, tinged a vivid red by ferocity and despair. He was so resentful, so unwilling, yet so helplessly pitiful. Exulting in his victory, Mo-Run made his demands, his voice steady yet not without malice. Faster. No reply. Are you tired already? You're moving so slowly. But even like this, Chu Wanling's ironclad will was firm, and he refused to yield. He exhaled, hatred plain in his teary red-rimmed eyes. Then he bit down on his lip and began to move, fast and rough, almost as if punishing himself. It was agony. He did it again and again. Even when his arched back began to shudder and cold sweat drenched his body, still he didn't beg, didn't make a sound. Through the long, inky locks obscuring Chu Wanling's vision, Mo-Run's eyes were bright in the black of night, burning with animalistic desire, madness, ecstasy, gratification. A stifled groan. It seemed the man on top of him could finally withstand the pain no longer. Mo-Run's eyes darkened, and he sat up without warning, wrapping his arms around Chu Wanling's trembling, sweat-soaked body, which, for all his desperate endurance, was still racked with the faintest shivers. The change in position only sheathed Mo-Run deeper inside him, until he felt his stomach might be pierced through. That cruel, ruthless person caressed him, his touch tender yet laced with venom. Chu Wanling, did you ever think you'd end up like this? Sitting in my lap, taking my cock? Mo-Run held him tightly, fucking slowly in and out. He nuzzled Chu Wanling intimately, and a shudder ran through him. Young of the night sky, Beidou immortal. In the end, you still had to spread your legs and beg me to fuck you. His hands wandered along Chu Wanling's waist, and he thrust in deep, reveling in the feeling of Chu Wanling clenched tight around his cock. Mo-Run was intoxicated. There were practically fireworks going off in his chest, but he put up a front of calm indifference as he tormented and humiliated the man astride him. Didn't you call me lowly? Didn't you look down on me? But Chu Wanling, now it's you who seeks my favor. This is exactly why I made such a big deal of making sure that I fully remembered why the root cause of why Mo-Run feels towards Chu Wanling and then subsequently Shimei the way he does. It was for this moment exactly. And it's a little sooner than I thought. Both in the volume, well, in the whole book, both in the book, in the volume, in the stream. Hello! Welcome to this series. So, I mentioned how at a very young age, Mo-Run wound up imprinting all of his hatred and viciousness and humiliation from the abuse that he had suffered, and the sense of betrayal, obviously, at the hands of Chu Wanling for the flower. He had imprinted all of that on Chu Wanling. So in the OG timeline, Mo Run's eventual torture and abuse of Chuaning is a bit about Chuaning, especially, Mo Run's perception that Chuaning just let Shimei die. It's partially about Chuaning, but I would say it's at least half about every scrap of Mo Run's lack of self-worth and humiliation he is taking out on Chuaning, even the parts of that humiliation and pain that has nothing to do with Chuaning. Because these lines in particular, didn't you call me lowly? Didn't you look down on me? But Chuaning, now it's you who seeks my favor. He's talking to Chuaning, but he's also talking to the people who abused him during his very young years. And so we're dealing with a deeply broken little boy that is at the core of Mo Run, and both the pain that he experiences and the unbelievable pain that he inflicts on others, particularly Chuaning. Yeah. He sank his teeth viciously into Chuaning's jaw. Look down. Look at how you're sucking me in, Between the two of us, who's the more lowly here, my dear Shizun? Silent, shivering, Chuaning closed his eyes. He didn't want to hear such filthy words. It was his first time. It was with the person he had once liked, yet it was torture worse than death. Open your eyes, came the callous order by his ear. I still have Shui Meng. You know what I'll do if you disobey. He had no choice. Slowly, he opened eyes brimming with tears he refused to let fall. The hand on his jaw forced him to look down at the side of himself, taking his disciple's cock. The sound of flesh against flesh, the stickiness of blood mixed with thick fluid, all of it was unbearably wanton. Up a little. There was no strength in his legs, but he didn't want Mo Run's help. The last tattered piece of his dignity lifted his body by force of will alone. The hardness inside him slid out until only the engorged head was pressed to his entrance. Mo Run wrapped his hand around his own length and thrust in shallowly a few times, just enough for Chuaning to see himself breached. Chuaning's lashes quivered, from pain or humiliation or arousal. You're such a slut, Mo Run breathed. If I'd known sooner, I would have fucked you back when I was your disciple. He was an uncultured scoundrel, after all, with no manners or elegance to speak of. Those vulgar words slipped into Chuaning's heart like a blade. He lifted his head, closed his eyes, and spoke for the first time that night in a voice raspy and raw. Mo Run, just kill me. The hand on his waist twitched imperceptibly. Then Mo Run smiled, sweet as ever, the bow of his mouth framed by a pair of charming dimples. Okay. Chuaning's eyes flew open. In those tear-filled eyes that made his blood boil with arousal, Mo Run saw the reflection of his own twisted smile. If you want to die, I won't stop you. But you don't get to choose how. I'll let 1,000 people fuck you while your good little disciple Shui Meng looks on. Actually, Shui Meng should join in too. How about that? You. His cruel words stung Chuaning like venom, and, like the scorpion, Mo Run watched his work with glee. Watched the blood drain from Chuaning's face, his lightly parted lips trembling despite his restraint. Mo Run suddenly felt a deep sense of satisfaction, colored with pity, but also with delight and arousal. He pulled Chu Wanning back into his arms and buried his cock deep inside, thrusting relentlessly into him at a pace unforgiving, almost frenzied. "You're so gullible. You actually believed that." He let out a deep laugh and kissed Chu Wanning ravenously, his hands kneading and stroking him as he said between heavy breaths, "Don't think too hard. I was just messing with you." Chu Wanning seemed about to fall to pieces with every thrust. More than that, it was as if his soul itself had shattered. "Just messing with you." Mo-Run's breaths came in harsh pants. It wasn't enough. He pushed Chu Wanning to the floor and leaned over him, bearing down heavily and lifting Chu Wanning's leg to thrust deeper as he snapped his hips with abandon. "How could I bear to let anyone else touch you like that? You're mine. Only I get to." Pale, slender fingers scrabbled against the ground, but found no purchase. In the end, Chu Wanning was powerless. He could only let Mo-Ran do as he pleased until his consciousness began to fade, and the light in his eyes grew dim. Chu Wanning suddenly lifted his arm and covered his eyes. "Mo-Ran," he said softly. "Mo-Ran, if you still have any compassion in you, any conscience." His lashes shuddered against the back of his hand. "Please, don't do this anymore, Mo-Ran." His voice broke on a sob. It was the first time in Mo-Ran's past life that he saw Chu Wanning cry. "Mo-Ran, I can't take it anymore. It hurts." That's a scene break. Like, let me get to the end of the chapter because there's just a page of, hang on. Chu Wanning rolled over, jolting Mo-Ran out of his debauched reverie. The past dissipated like a scattering of birds, leaving only his heart to pound against his ribcage. The long strands between his fingers slipped away as the person from his memories turned toward him, his face so close now that Mo-Ran could see each individual eyelash. How beautiful, he thought. Objectively speaking, Chu Wanning's looks weren't gentle or soft by any measure. His features were handsome, sharp and intense as if cut by blades, and in truth more masculine than average. But that only made him all the more enticing. Mo-Ran wanted to see this proud, unbending man come undone beneath him. His heart beat faster and faster. He stared at Chu Wanning's face, and his gaze drifted inch by inch, until it came to rest on those pale lips, lightly parted in sleep. He leaned in unconsciously. A little closer and their lips would meet. The sweet taste of dew. Mo-Ran's throat worked as he swallowed. His mouth felt dry. A little closer, just a little more, almost. Suddenly a flash of clarity shot through his arousal-addled mind. He froze, face deathly pale. What was he doing? Mo-Ran sat up swiftly and stared at the man on the bed. Chu Wanning, no matter how many times he'd betted him, that was all in the past now. The fuck was he doing? Had he lost his mind? Was it possible he really did like him? Mo-Ran blanched further at the thought, so unsettled he couldn't think straight. He drew in a deep breath and buried his face in his hands, scrubbing it roughly. Then, cursing under his breath, he pulled on his outer robe and swept out of the room, as if running away. That's the end of the chapter. I don't know why I'm going to put the bookmark in it. Maybe because I think I'm about to talk for 20 million years. I so did not think we would be getting into this today. You can understand evil acts without lessening the weight of them. And someone who has done, like, this is a guy who, because of his utterly broken self-worth, became Tianjun and conquered everything just to try to feel like he was worth something and to get revenge on the people who made him feel like trash. This is like Shu Yung from the Untamed on steroids. Modazushi on steroids. And one of the reasons why I was so interested in picking up this series, despite knowing ultimately, like what we just read, how dark it gets and how far it goes, part of it is like an experiment. I want to see if this author can do the work necessary to kind of, for lack of a better word, rebuild the psyche of someone who falls so far and becomes so broken as to, at one point in his life, or in this case, his past life, do things like this and murder and torture and conquer. And what would that look like in a story? That's part of the experiment. I was very curious to see if an author can do that. And so far, in the first 2 volumes, we've already had some very important, like, steps forward on the long road of Mo Run's what ultimately, at least in some way, shape, or form, is likely to be a redemption arc, depending on how it goes. We've already seen some very big steps of progress, and we've already come to understand him on such a level. And it's a new experience for me to understand somebody who was once this and then watch how their life would have played out differently had certain things happened differently, and had he known certain things. I'm just very, so far I am very impressed with the way that Meat Bun is laying this groundwork of Moran as a character. And I'm deeply curious to see where he goes, as fucking dark and awful and violent and sadistic as he was. Shit. We're on page 19. For chapter 90, which is called This Venerable One's Idiom Explanation is Just Fine. By the time Chu Wanning finally woke up, it was noon. The tapir fragrance dew was certainly quite effective. He had managed to get a full night's rest, undisturbed by dreams. He sat up leisurely and yawned. Moran? That disciple of his loved sleep far more than he, so it was a surprise not to find him still curled up on the floor. Chu Wanning blinked, then called for him again. No reply. He stood and smoothed his robes, brushing through the wispy strands of his long hair and pulling it up as he padded toward the screen dividing the room. The divider bore an elegantly painted image of wild birds soaring through a cloud bank woven between mountain peaks. Steam rose from behind it. Someone was bathing on the other side. He hesitated before the screen and tried again. Moran? Still there was no reply. Is he sleeping in the bath? What is... Growing suspicious, Chu Wanning knocked on the wooden frame of the divider. After several more attempts with no response, he finally furrowed his brow and walked around the screen. This part of the room was intended for washing and bathing, and a large bath barrel of camphor wood stood right in the middle. Oh, what? Okay. All right. Art. Whiplashed, but art. Chu Wanning glanced at it hastily. It was filled with hot, steamy water, and bathing herbs set out earlier by the inn floated on its surface. But right now, there was no one to be seen. He looked around again and spied Mo-Run's clothes folded neatly over the wooden frame. He couldn't possibly have bathed and then run out naked, could he? No, he's got to be under the water. So he can come up all glistening and wet and naked, don't you know? Because this wasn't devastating enough for Chu Wanning's psyche. Chu Wanning's temples throbbed as he shoved that terrifying thought aside, his lips pressed tightly together and face slightly ashen. He turned and was about to leave when he heard gurgling from behind him. Chu Wanning looked back to see bubbles rising to the water's surface from beneath the herbs and petals floating in the barrel. Was someone inside? No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than a naked young man sprang from the barrel with a splash, like a dragon soaring out of the water. Chu Wanning was so startled he inadvertently stumbled back 2 steps. It seemed Mo-Run had been holding his breath underwater, and so didn't hear Chu Wanning calling for him outside. When he could hold it no longer, he stood, fully exposing the upper half of his body. He shook the water from his hair like a dog drying itself, splashing all of it right onto Chu Wanning's robes. Mo-Run! Mo-Run froze mid-shake, eyes wide and round. He clearly hadn't expected Chu Wanning to be there and gasped, "Shizin! You!" Chu Wanning's eyes swept across the young man's well-proportioned figure. Mo-Run's shoulders had already become quite broad, the lines of his body firm and defined, supple and youthfully taut. Droplets of water traced the contours of his toned chest, gathering in thin rivulets that trickled down, dazzling under the sunlight. Oh yeah, there's art of this. That was gonna be my question. Isn't Mo-Run like 17 by now? Isn't that about right? Because I could have sworn there was sometime between Volume 1 and Volume 2, there was, if not a full time skip, there was a little just time passing. Or is he still 15, 16? Oh, he's around 17, yeah? Okay. Where, like I've never done this before. The art, ladies and gentlemen. I totally held this up with the wrong hand, so now I can't take a drink and show you guys at the same time. Oh, I just clocked his long hair. Well, damn. He looked like a beautiful merman, half out of the water, eyes glistening, a few stray petals caught in the wet hair that clung to his body. Mo-Run wiped the water from his face and leaned toward Chu Wanning with a grin, his shoulder blades flexing like a leopard's as he folded his arms over the edge of the bath and tilted his head to beam brightly up at him. Chu Wanning found himself a little dizzy, his face a little warm, and he asked without thinking, "What are you doing?" "Taking a bath." "In the morning?" Huh. Mo-Run chuckled guiltily. He was actually rinsing with cold water in an attempt to put out the fire in his loins. Why wasn't that my first guess? It had worked well enough, but then, since he had already stripped, he felt he might as well take a bath while he was at it. The soak had put him in a good mood, so he had dived down to practice holding his breath. He certainly hadn't anticipated that Chu Wanning would wander in like this. "What's with that goofy smile?" Chu Wanning knitted his brows, trying to cover up the heat steaming his brain with a cool tone of voice. "Why didn't you wake me if you were up early, messing around like this, throwing your clothes all over the place? Where are you at? Shizun, you got some water on your face." There was a splash as Mo-Run lifted his hand to wipe Chu Wanning's cheek. "Nurse." Mo-Run laughed. He had forgotten that his hand was wet too, and would only make Chu Wanning's cheek even wetter. Chu Wanning stood frozen, the air around him cooling by several degrees. His expression was strained, his lips pressed together, only his eyelashes quivered now and then. He felt like he was trying to train a hunting dog, only to get nuzzled by the crafty pup instead. "Get out and get dressed. We have to head back to the sect." In the end, Chu Wanning tossed out these words with a frosty expression and left with a swish of his sleeves. But where Moran couldn't see, the tips of Chu Wanning's ears were red. Just like how, where Chu Wanning couldn't see, that pair of dewy eyes, still tinged with yearning and swimming with complicated feelings, stared helplessly after him until he disappeared around the corner. The endearing smile slid off Moran's face, replaced by a look of frustration. He smacked the water in annoyance, then scooped up a handful and scrubbed mercilessly at his face. What the actual hell? What was wrong with him today? All he did was look at Chu Wanning a little while bathing and touch his cheek briefly. He had just managed to suppress his arousal, and now he was hard again. What? There's a small scene break. Weren't you just getting dressed? What took you so long? Chu Wanning chided. He turned from his place by the window in obvious exasperation. His robes fluttered gently in the breeze, and fine strands of hair caressed his jade-like cheeks. Moran coughed. I was drying my hair with a spell, he mumbled vaguely, but I'm not very good at it, so it took a while. Sorry to keep Shizun waiting. Such uncharacteristic propriety caught Chu Wanning a bit off guard. He shot his disciple another glance before saying, If you're done washing, go get packed. We can go rent a boat. I don't feel like riding swords, and I'm tired of horses too. Let's go buy water and enjoy. Let's go buy water and enjoy some sightseeing on the way. Okay, sounds good. Moran didn't dare look at him for too long, coughing a few more times to cover his unease. Chu Wanning frowned. What's wrong with your throat? Nothing. Moran turned hastily to go pack. They stopped at a store to pick up some snacks and dry goods for the trip, then made their way to the docks to rent a vessel. The pair sailed down the Yangtze River. Whenever they came to an area impassable by water, they unfurled the wooden wings of the boat and soared through the air on a magical draft instead. This method of travel wasn't swift, but it was peaceful and relaxing. Eight days later, they arrived at Xisheng Peak. The wooden boat slid down the current to dock by the mountain gate. Moran lifted the bamboo curtain, allowing Chu Wanning to step out from the cabin first before following himself. The hour was late, and the moon hung bright overhead. The Yuheng elder had written to Shui Jingyong with explicit instructions not to send a reception, so they encountered no one until they'd already climbed the stairs to the main gate. There, 4 disciples guarded the entrance. Yuheng elder, Mo Gongzhe. For some reason, panic flashed across the disciples' faces at the sight of them. Before either could react, all 4 dropped to their knees and looked up at the pair. Elder, Gongzhe, they entreated urgently. There are people inside who've come to seek retribution against you. The sect leader sent a messenger bird to tell you to stay away, but it looks like that fat bird was too slow. Please go hide in Wucheng Tower for a while. Whatever you do, don't go inside right now. Chu Wanning narrowed his eyes. What is the matter? Why are you all so panicked? It's people from the upper cultivation realm. They're accusing the elder of demonic cultivation, and they want to haul you off to Tianyin Pavilion for an inquiry. What in the Wei Wuxian? Tianyin Pavilion? Moran repeated, alarmed. Isn't that the prison set up by all 10 great sects, reserved for the most heinous of criminals? That's the one. They're here about that incident at Butterfly Town. One of the 4, a young woman, said anxiously. Does the elder remember that time you were caned as punishment? At most, that was a misuse of cultivation techniques or involving ordinary people. Besides, Shizun has already accepted punishment for it. Why have they suddenly dragged out that old affair again, and even gone so far as to involve Tianyin Pavilion? Moran frowned. And what's this about demonic cultivation? We don't know the details either, but we heard everyone in Butterfly Town died overnight, killed by some half-ghost, half-deity entity that appeared to be acting at someone's behest. The ghost deity is incredibly powerful, and the average wandering cultivator definitely wouldn't be able to order her about, so those people from the upper cultivation realm suspect that Yuheng Elder did it. Chu Wanning had no words. Me fucking either. Moran laughed. And here I was, getting all worried. This is a simple misunderstanding, easy enough to explain. There's no need to hide. He turned to grin at Chu Wanning. Shizun, can you believe these people? Expel some small fiend and they'll say you're taking opportunities from the youngsters. Purge a major demon and they'll accuse you of practicing demonic cultivation and keeping a ghost deity to do your bidding. At this rate, we'd best stop doing anything at all and sit at home meditating all day like they do. Ooh. But Chu Wanning wasn't laughing. His expression was terrible, and he stood quietly for a time before asking, "Every single person at Butterfly Town is dead." "That's what I heard. Not one survivor." Chu Wan-ning closed his eyes, silent. The female disciple noticed his strange expression. "Elder?" she asked uneasily. "This incident was not my doing, but it may have occurred because I was not sufficiently thorough in the exorcism. If I am indeed to blame, then I will not shirk responsibility." Chu Wan-ning opened his eyes slowly. "Moran, let's go in." Not concerned at all. There's a little bit of a scene break. The walls of Loyalty Hall were lined with 12 lamps of coiling bronze. Each lamp was 10 feet tall, with 9 layers of branches extending from the central stand, short toward the top and longer toward the bottom. The 356 candle lanterns on these branches lit the main hall of Xisheng Peak so brightly that the night was practically indistinguishable from day. Shui Jungyong, dressed in full martial attire, stood straight-backed on the high dais of the hall. He looked like a cast-iron statue as he stared down the people below with the eyes of a predator. Hang on. Not only is this, I believe, a new name or way of addressing, it's also part of a line break, so I can't even look at it all at the same time. Hang on. Li Zhuangju? I'll say it one last time. The Yuheng Elder is not at the sect right now. Moreover, I can vouch with my very life that what happened at Butterfly Town was no doing of his. So quit throwing around all these baseless, whatchamacallit. Next to him, Madame Wang whispered discreetly from behind her sleeve, "Accusations." Quit throwing around all these baseless, whatchamacallit accusations, Shui Jingyang declared with an imposing sweep of his hand. But I love him. Madame Wang was at a loss for words. Not counting Xisheng Peak's own guard disciples, some 30 people waited in the hall. The group was dressed in jade-green robes, carried horsetail whisks in their arms, and wore square, black gauze jinshin hats. Obviously disciples from the recently established and rapidly rising, Bitan Manor? Of the upper cultivation realm. The man at their head was in his 50s, with a pair of long whiskers that stuck out from the sides of his face and drifted in the slight draft like those of a catfish. This was none other than the Bitan Manor leader himself, Li Wuxin. "Shui Jiangmen," Li Wuxin sneered as he twirled a whisker. "I'm only here to reason with you because your sect is yet considered a righteous one. The tragedy at Butterfly Town, which is wild, by the way, the tragedy at Butterfly Town occurred after your Yuheng Elder and his disciples performed an exorcism there. Other than these 3, the Chen household had no contact whatsoever with any cultivators. We have evidence and witnesses both. You have no choice but to admit fault in this manner." Yeah, I clocked the yet considered. As yet considered? Yeah, Josie, you and me. Yeah, like, what the fuck have you done lately? Thank you. No, I'm with you. I'm so with you, I lost my place. No, there I am. Shui Meng, standing next to his father, couldn't take it anymore. "And what fucking right do you lot have to speak? When have you ever taken it upon yourselves to deal with the problems of the lower cultivation realm? Go off, Shui Meng! All you ever do is sit on your hands trying to cultivate yourselves to immortality. Then the moment something happens, you rush down here and try to lay the blame on my Shizun. What kind of justice is that?" "Oh, I missed you, baby." Shui Gongzhe. Rather than get mad, Li Wuxin leveled a meaningful look at him and smiled. "I've heard of you. People call you the son of the Phoenix, but meeting you in person today and seeing for myself your poise and composure has certainly been, shall we say, an eye-opening experience." Oh, we're throwing hands. No, no, let me fight. Can I fight? Let me fight. Let Shui Meng fight. Come on, Dad. Please, let him fight. You. Li Wuxin rolled his eyes and turned back to Shui Jingyang. Shui men, we of the upper cultivation realm practice strict adherence to the laws, and we intend to get to the bottom of this. If you really refuse to cooperate and will not hand over Yu Hong, Muran, and the rest, then I shall have no choice but to entreat the foremost sect of the cultivation world, Rufeng sect, to take charge of the investigation themselves. Shui Jingyong had always had a fierce temper. He scoffed at this threat. I'm well aware that your Bitan manor is chummy with Rufeng sect, but even if Nangang Lu himself stood before me today, I'd tell him the same thing. I will not hand them over. This has nothing to do with Yu Hong. Well then, said Shui Meng, hot on his heels. Li Zhuangju, kindly see yourself out. See that? Did everyone see that? Do you see how difficult and unreasonable they are? They're aiding and abetting criminals. Oh my god. Ugh. I'm sorry, I was just violently reminded of modern day political discourse in my country. A man's shaky voice burst from the crowd. It was the same back then, when that Mo character stole my friend's things. We came here courteously seeking justice, and they brushed us off and kicked us out just like this. Li Zhuangju, you saw it too, right? If Xisheng Peak is allowed to continue acting so outrageously, considering themselves above the law, then the lower cultivation realm will be done for. He had barely finished when a low chuckle came from the hall's entrance. Everyone turned toward the door. There, in the shadows where the light spilling from the hall did not reach, stood a blue-robed young man in light armor. He leaned casually against the intricately carved vermilion door frame and watched the scene within the hall with a languid expression. This youth was extremely handsome, his supple and firm skin practically glowing under the candlelight. Is it who I think it is? Pray tell, Chang Gongzhe, when exactly did I ever steal anything from your friend? His smile was soft and charming. That Rong-san, or was it Rong-ju? I can't remember. Anyway, that pretty boy, is he your friend or your paramour? Rather deceptive of you to only tell part of the story, What if you hurt his feelings? The man complaining so woefully was none other than that merchant Chung from Yuzhou, the very same who had declared that Xisheng Peak hadn't seen the last of him all those months ago. Not who I thought it was going to be, but I'll take it. Cheng Gongzhe whipped his head around, startled to see Moran. But then something flickered in his eyes, and he howled in misery. Mo Wei Yu, you bastard! My friendship with Juer is like that of mortar and pestle, perfectly innocent. He's already died so tragically at the hands of your fiendish ilk, yet you still dare slander his name. Amazing. 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 Also a footnote. Where was the footnote? Oh, mortar and pestle. Oh, it's an idiom. I was like, I know what a mortar and pestle is, but no, it's an idiom. Excuse me. The first footnote, can I speak today? Of the volume, Mortar and Pestle. Or maybe it was a fuller... Well, in that, my friendship with Juer is like that of Mortar and Pestle, perfectly innocent. Okay, before I actually read what the idiom is, no matter what it says, I find it high-key hilarious that he chose Mortar and Pestle to describe an innocent friendship just on the visual of a mortar and pestle alone. I find that deliciously ironic. I don't even care if she intended it or not. She probably did. I don't even care. Oh! An idiom referring to people who are friends regardless of status or means. The idiom finds its origin in a story. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, a scholar named Gong Shamu, in order to raise funds to attend the Imperial College, donned plain clothes and found work pounding rice, using mortar and pestle, at the residence of an official named Wu Yo. Wu Yo? Wu Yu. Wu Yu found him cultured and eloquent and made friends with him and paid for him to continue his education. Gong Shamu went on to become an accomplished official. Okay, sure. I understand that the guy means it with no irony whatsoever. Me, however, being shameless, This is peak comedy. He's already died so tragically at the hands of your fiendish ilk, yet you still slander his name. What? A chill ran down Mo-ran's spine and his eyes widened slightly. Rongju is dead. His parents are from Butterfly Town, Chong Gong-jo went on, angry and tearful. He met with misfortune while visiting home some days ago. That's how I learned of you and your Shizun's evil deeds. That's why I went to Li Zhuangju for justice. Mo-ran's opinion of Rongju was far from positive, so after the initial shock had passed, he dismissed Chong Gong-jo with a curt wave of his hand. Friendship of mortar and pestle. So what, you're the pestle and he's the mortal? Mortar? Sorry, I'm tripping. Hang on. No. Vindication. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so... Excuse me. Let me try that again. Friendship of mortar and pestle. So what, you're the pestle and he's the mortar. Pound, pound, pound. Not sure how that's innocent, but okay. Thank you. Mo-ran! Chong Gong-jo hadn't expected this and was quite affronted. You illiterate reprobate! You It was a bit much for Madame Wong, too. Only Shui Jung-yong blinked and said nothing. Mortar this and pestle that, whatever that meant. It couldn't be anything good. He felt like his nephew's words made quite a lot of sense, actually. Nothing wrong with them. Stop. This is too funny. This is too funny. I'm so sorry. I can't believe the unbelievable roller coaster of the first... We started on page 11? So... 29 pages? No, 19 pages. We've already been through too much. From the darkness of the night outside the hall came a sigh like the shattering of jade or the first melt of a frozen over lake, deep and indescribably lovely. A slender, well-proportioned hand reached out and delivered an unceremonious slap right across Mo-ran's face. Such obscenity. Friendship of mortar and pestle means a friendship that disregards status and means, like that between Gong Shamu and Wu Yu. Chu Wanning appeared in the doorway, expression dark and tone cross. What are you doing, hanging around the door, being an embarrassment? Get the hell inside. Shizun! And then Shizun, because everybody's seeing him for the first time. Shui Meng and Shimei, overjoyed, rushed forward to greet him. But Shui Jung-yong's eyes widened in exasperation. Yu Hung, what are you doing back here? How long were you planning to hold out by yourself if I didn't come? Chu Wanning strode serenely into Loyalty Hall, his handsome face like that of an immortal under the candlelight, unsurpassed in grace and elegance. He came to a stop before the golden seat within the hall, and exchanged a nod with Shui Jing-yong, then turned toward the petitioners with a flourish of his wide sleeves. Chu Wanning of Sisheng Peak, humble bearer of the title Yu Hung Elder. It seems you have questions for me. I would not refuse you answers. Li Wuxian stared in shock, but Chu Wanning, his phoenix eyes like smoke, spared him the barest glance before continuing in an even tone, kindly do enlighten me. That's the end of the chapter. Page 33 for chapter 91. This venerable one, Shizun, is a pro. Oh, I am here for this. Oh, yes. 1010%. Hang on. We started fairly late, but are we coming up on about an hour-ish? I believe we are, actually. Okay. Page 33 for chapter 91. This venerable one, Shizun, is a pro. I'm going to take a very, 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 very quick break. It is hopefully going to be quicker than usual, especially since we got a late start today. So I am going to put on the break screen. This is your cue to go up and run to the bathroom, get a snack, do whatever, or maybe just take a turn about the room, you know, get the blood flowing a little bit. It's not good to stay seated for too long, right? So get up, walk around, freshen the blood, get fucking pumped for whatever the hell Chu Wanning's perfection is about to bestow upon us. And I'll be back in just a few minutes for the second half. Alrighty. It's so good to be back, you guys. I'm so fucking excited. Ah, First stream of the new year. I'll be back in a few minutes. sound. There we go. We back? We good? Is that good? Yeah? It should be back. It should be good. Yeah? I think I got it. Perfect. So sorry. Very quickly recapping. Yes, we have the stream on Thursday because it is typically Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to around 5 p.m. However, next week there will only be a stream on Tuesday because I have the other part of that dental work that I mentioned earlier on Wednesday, and in recovering from that, I will not be able to have a stream on Thursday. Yeah? This week, Tuesday, Thursday, next week, only Tuesday. But then after that, it should be regularly scheduled programming for a while. So, we are on page 33 for chapter 91. This venerable one, Shizun, is a pro. I'm very excited for this. Okay, fuck them up. Let's go. This man's elegant robes were white as snow against the backdrop of the great hall. He stood in the hall with his hands folded neatly behind him, the silk of his robes soft as airy clouds, and his expansive sleeves brushing the ground. His expression appeared solemn and dignified, but upon closer inspection his eyes were slightly lifted, and his lashes draped down. Beneath that veneer of politeness lay scorn and superiority in equal measure. Li Wuxian had never dreamed that this was the Yuheng elder. His face instantly fell. Li Zhuangju, Chu Wanning said calmly. Long time no see. How could it be you? Li Wuxian's face was as pale as dry wax. His silver tongue that had been flapping away a moment ago tied itself into a knot as he stuttered, We haven't heard a word from you since you left Wufeng sect. Here we thought you went off to wander the world, yet who knew you were actually down here in the muck, casting pearls before swine? Can we fucking... Chu Wanning snorted, his eyes cool. You think I'm a pearl? I'm flattered. Shizun, I don't... Li Wuxian was too flabbergasted to reply. Girl, same. Now, enough small talk. Let's come to the point. I hear you think I've murdered the 500 civilians of Butterfly Town to practice dark magic. This was not done by my hand, but seeing as Li Zhuangju has come all this way, I assume there have already been a few misunderstandings. I'm afraid I have more important affairs to attend to, so I won't be accompanying you to Tianyin Pavilion. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, you are welcome to do so now. With that, Chu Wanning took his seat with a sweep of his sleeves, as though even standing would be too much effort for him. Every elder had a designated seat within the Loyalty Hall, and Chu Wanning's was situated to the left of Shui Zhengyong's, lined with a fine bamboo mat and obscured by a half-lowered bamboo screen. Compared to the Lusun elder's seat beside it, which overflowed with fresh blossoms, Chu Wanning's appeared incredibly meager and simple. In the years since he had left Wufeng sect, Chu Wanning had never made deliberate attempts to conceal his name, but it wouldn't be inaccurate to say he'd kept a low profile. While the younger generation of Bitan Manor had heard of him, they had no notion of how powerful he was. Li Wuxian was a different story. He'd been around the block in the upper cultivation realm. How could he not know of the infamous Yuheng elder? He clenched his fists tight within his sleeves as he stole several glances at Chongqingzhe. Had he not already accepted a lavish advance payment from the Chang family, he could have steered clear of this disastrous situation. At the time, he'd thought the Yuheng elder of Xisheng Peak was just some small-time cultivator of little repute. How was he to know that it was Chu Wanning who had been out of the public eye for so long? If he had, he would never have let himself get roped into this mess, no matter how generous the compensation. Now he was stuck, unable to advance or retreat. What should he do? Die in a fire, probably. Yup, bribed. Very bribed. Deeply bribed. Li Wuxian kept his expression carefully neutral, but inside he was miserable. Aw, I feel so bad for you. It was then that one of his disciples decided to flaunt his ignorance. Believing it was this young elder who was the unreasonable one and his master was at a loss for how to handle the man, the disciple spoke up, thinking himself rather clever. Elder Chu, you recently traveled to Butterfly Town to perform an exorcism, did you not? Chu Wanning peered out from under his lashes and gave the young man a look. That is correct. Then were you also the one who sealed that ghost bride? Are you speaking of Lo Shen? The young man's words died on his lips. He only knew that the evil creature that visited disaster upon Butterfly Town was a ghost bride. He didn't know much more than that. When Chu Wanning turned the question back on him, he had no response. His face flushed. In any case, it's that ghost girl. Why do you have so many questions? She's young, about 15 or 16. How many newlyweds who suffered wrongful deaths could there be in such a small town? Chu Wanning smiled coldly. Butterfly Town practices a custom of posthumous marriage. The town harbors at least 50, if not 100, ghost brides, so I really don't know to which one you're referring. You... Li Wuxian cut in. How can you address the elder so disrespectfully? How impudent. Hold your tongue. After dealing his outspoken disciple a sound scolding, Li Wuxian quickly changed tack. He turned to Chu Wanning, his tone now pleasant and agreeable. Please forgive my disciple, Chu Zhongshe. This is his first time leaving the mountain, so he is unacquainted with the rules. The ghost bride of whom he spoke is indeed the girl Lo Shen. Chu Wanning furrowed his brows slightly. Lo Shen's resentful spirit went berserk? Indeed, Li Wuxian asked. The ghost girl lost her mind. She didn't stop at killing every member of the Chen family. She slaughtered the entire town. By the time my disciples and I arrived to seal her, there was barely a soul left alive in the entire settlement. How can that be? Chu Wanning muttered. I had heard that the Yuheng elder of Xisheng Peak was involved in this affair. There's something fishy about this whole business, which is why we came to speak to you. In addition, I obtained 2 items while at Butterfly Town. Chu Zhongshe, please examine them carefully and see if they've aught to do with you. As he spoke, Li Wuxian retrieved a bloodied yellow silk cloth from his sleeve, intending to hand it to Chu Wanning, but unexpectedly, Shui Meng stepped forward. He blocked Li Wuxian with an irritated humph. I'll take it. My Shizun is a stickler for cleanliness. He won't touch anything dirtied by the hands of outsiders. This was a bit of an exaggeration. Chu Wanning wasn't actually such a stickler. He just preferred not to touch things handled by people he didn't like. But it was true that Chu Wanning couldn't stand Li Wuxian. He said not a word at Shui Meng's meddling, but merely lowered his lashes as he sipped the hot tea Shimei brought him. Powerless, Li Wuxian swallowed his indignation. He could only sneer as he passed the yellow silk into Shui Meng's hands. Under the flickering candlelight, all eyes were drawn to this scrap of cloth. Chu Wanning shook it open. He took only a glance before his face fell. The incantation of deliverance. That's right, Chu Zhongshe. I looked into it and found that you were the one who temporarily sealed the resentful spirit Lo Shen. Before you left, you gave a copy of this incantation of deliverance to the only daughter of the Chen family and told her that the family must copy and recite it once a day for 10 years. Is that correct? It is. The incantation of deliverance on this silk is written in Chu Zhongshe's hand, is it not? A pause. That is indeed the case. But Chu Zhongshe, at the end of each passage of this incantation of deliverance, there are written extra characters comprising a different spell. Li Wuxian raised his voice. I trust you know what this is. Sigil of the Returning Billows, a reversal spell. Every time the Chen family copied the incantation of deliverance, they would draw this reversal spell symbol, thereby transforming the spell that was meant to put the dead to rest into a spell to cause harm, eroding the seal on Lo Shen until she turned into a savage ghost and massacred the town. The Chen family themselves were completely ignorant of the ways of cultivation. Besides the Yuheng elder who personally gave them this silk cloth, I cannot think of a second individual who could have taught them to draw such a spell. Oh my god, it's fucking... It's the Song of Clarity all over again. Fucking... Okay. was so indignant. I'm over here. What am I doing? Watch your tone, old man. Shui Meng was outraged. If my Shizun wanted them dead, why use such a roundabout method? What spell? What reversal spell? Can't handwriting be forged? You think my Shizun drew these characters? Well, maybe I think it was a certain son of a bastard who added them to frame another, and I'm looking right at him. I love this boy. I love him so much. Okay. Li Wuxian smiled mirthlessly. Shui Meng Gongzhe, weren't you ever taught not to interrupt the conversations of your elders? I'm sure they tried to teach him, yeah. Yeah. I think an effort was made, sure. Shui Jingyong spoke up. Li Zhuangzhu, isn't it a bit of a reach to accuse Yu Heng based only on this silk cloth? My son is right. Handwriting can be imitated. If someone wanted to frame Yu Heng, they could simply copy this spell a few times and learn to match his handwriting. Then we must ask, countered Li Wuxian, does Chu Zhongshe have some arch nemesis who would go to such lengths to harm him? Well, that's the thing. That's like a complicated question with a very complicated list of possibilities. It's complicated. Moran, who had stood quietly to the side until now, suddenly barked out a dry laugh. Li Wuxian looked over at him. He recalled this young man's earlier vulgar talk of mortar and pestle and couldn't help but frown. What are you laughing at? It's just you're all so busy dreaming up wild speculations, you've overlooked one thing. What thing? Shui Jingyong asked curiously. Renner, what are you thinking? I'm not all that well read, but I do happen to know a bit about this sigil of the returning billows, and I also happen to know how to draw it. Moran laughed. Here, isn't this it? As he spoke, he gathered a smudge of red spiritual power at the tip of his finger. He leaned lazily against the pillar, and the spiritual power swooped and darted before him. Soon, an expertly rendered sigil of the returning billows simmered in the air before him, pretty as fireworks. Shui Meng was shocked. Why, you mutt, that's amazing! When did you learn to do that? Moran laughed. It's all there in Shizun's books. I thought it looked interesting, so I memorized it. He tapped the luminous red spell, and it rose gradually until it hovered over the heads of all present in the hall. The reversal mark glowed brilliantly, streaming bits of broken sparks. There now. Go on and compare the spell I drew with the one on the cloth. See if they don't look exactly the same. You are also in the middle of drawing a target on your face. What? Unless there's some greater point about how anybody could know this spell, because you're looking real... Okay. The disciples of Xisheng Peak loved a good spectacle. When they saw Chu Wanning stoically toss that silk cloth onto the table, offering his tacit consent, they all swarmed over without delay, crowding around the bit of cloth to compare the two in detail. The visitors from Bitan Manor stood stiff at first, but after a moment, between their own curiosity and the desire of some to poke holes in Moran's claim, every one of them clustered close as well. Both sects looked the cloth and the characters over for a good long while, and in the end came to the same conclusion. The characters Moran had drawn were indistinguishable from the spell on the silk cloth, as if they had been written by the same hand. Shaken, Li Wuxian's idiot disciple spoke up once again. He pointed at Moran. Good going! So you confess! You're the one who committed the murders! Moran eyed him without a word. What's your name? Chu Wanning asked evenly. You're asking me? That dim-witted disciple was first taken aback. Then he straightened his spine, head held high and chest puffed out as he proudly proclaimed, I am the 13th direct disciple of Wuxin, Jen Songming. Moran snorted. Jen Songming, very smart. Chu Wanning, on the other hand, barely reacted to disciple very smart. Disciple very smart! Oh god, yeah! Oh jeez. Oh no! Chu Wanning, on the other hand, barely reacted to disciple very smart. After all, he himself bore a name like Xia Sini, scare you to death. He said coolly, young ones ought to learn to keep their mouths shut when their elders are speaking. His mockery of Li Wuxian's comment toward Shui Meng earlier was obvious to all, and when Li Wuxian heard, his face flushed, the color of pig's liver. That's evocative. He was horribly frustrated, but couldn't think of a comeback, all too aware of the eyes on them. He said with a dissatisfied humph, Chuzongsha's disciples certainly are outstanding young men. How skillful they are to be able to draw this spell just as Zongsha does. It's not just me, Li Zhuangju, said Moran. If you knew how to draw this spell, it'd look the same as mine and Shizun's. Oh! No, that's too funny. Oh, that's so good. Oh, they all look the same. There's no such thing as handwriting in this sigil. No. That's good. That's so funny. Oh. Moran laughed. The strokes of the sigil of the returning billows are highly complex. The level of skill, the heaviness of the stroke, no element can be out of place. That's why it doesn't matter who drew it. It would come out just the same. One's handwriting plays no part. If a drawing is even slightly off, the spell won't work. That's so funny. That's so funny. Ridiculous. The humiliation of being corrected by a junior before a crowd was more than Li Wuxian could abide. All the hairs of his beard stood on end with outrage. What spell in this world could be so finicky? I don't need to have practiced this spell to know that's utter nonsense. Don't go making things up, you little brat. He's not making it up, Chu Wanning said. Li Wuxian had reached the limit of his patience. Chu Wanning, he exclaimed in anger, you speak without proof. How would you know? How can you know? The flaws and weaknesses of a spell are largely known only to its creator. Do you dare proclaim yourself the creator of the sigil of the returning billows? Chu Wanning lifted his eyes and considered him stonily. He took another sip of tea before leisurely replying, Daren't I? Then I'll tell you now. Li Wuxian stared at him in confusion. I created the sigil of the returning billows. Li Wuxian stared at him in dawning comprehension. That's the end of the chapter. Oh my god. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this is? This is a Karen stomping into a store and going up to customer service and bitching and arguing and finally being like, well, then I demand to see the manager. And then the clerk going, I am the manager. That's what this is. That's so good. That's the end of the chapter. Oh, that was so satisfying. Whew. We're on page 43 for chapter 92, which is called This Venerable One Returns to Butterfly Town. Yeah, so now I presume we're going to go and figure out what actually the hell happened at Butterfly Town? Oh, that's good. Whew. The entire hall stood in shock at these words, and the Buton Manor disciples looked as if they had been struck by lightning. In the cultivation world, average cultivators memorized spells, superior cultivators understood them, and exceptional cultivators adapted them. But far above the average, the superior, and the exceptional lay still another tier of cultivators, those who had no need for memorization, who had long since understood, and who were unsatisfied with adaptation. Those who had grasped the final step, creation. That was a beautifully translated paragraph, I just want to say. The whole thing's beautifully translated, but you know what I mean. These were the masters who refined unique pills and elixirs, the experts who crafted unparalleled arms and armor, the geniuses who drafted unprecedented spells and talismans, those whose skill commanded the title of Zongsha. To common cultivators, these Zongsha were little more than a name on a scroll, or perhaps a seal on a magical treasure. The young disciples from Buton Manor never imagined that the man they had brazenly attempted to arrest and dragged to Tanyan Pavilion for interrogation was one such godlike individual. Li Wuxian's forehead was covered in a sheen of cold sweat, but as the sect's leader, he had no choice but to put up a bold front and persevere. He squeezed out a smile, his waxy yellow face the color of rice hulls gleaming with grease. What a coincidence that the sigil of the returning billows was created by Chu Zongsha himself. This one has truly underestimated Chu Zongsha. However, while confronting the vengeful ghost of Luo Shenshen at Butterfly Town, I obtained yet another item. I wonder if this too might have some relation to Chu Zongshe. Chu Wanning knitted his brows. What item? Li Wuxian waved his hand, and disciple very smart swiftly brought over a brocade box. A weapon. Chu Wanning gazed silently at the box for a spell. Is it a willow vine? This time, everyone's eyes, including Mo Run's, widened in disbelief. Well, this would make sense. If you're trying to frame Chu Wanning, finding some way to plant something that could at least passably be taken for Chu Wanning's singular weapon would be a good way to do it. How did you know? Li Wuxian's voice shook as he spoke. Unless it really was you, but what's going on here? A golden light burst to life in Chu Wanning's palm, lengthening inch by inch until it coiled on the floor. As the glow dimmed, a length of willow vine, its delicate leaves unfurled, materialized before the onlookers. Chu Wanning was unfazed. By now, he was already certain that the incident at Butterfly Town was perpetuated by the same mysterious individual they'd encountered at Jingcheng Lake and Peach Blossom Springs. Li Zhuangzhu, the weapon in the box is this one, is it not? Yes. Li Wuxian's voice sputtered and nearly gave out on him. The brocade box was opened. Inside was indeed a length of willow vine identical to the one in Chu Wanning's hand in every way. It wouldn't be... shit. I can't remember what happened to it. You know, the other half, so to speak. Hello, where the heck am I? Chu Wanning narrowed his eyes. His suspicions had already been roused when that fake Jiangwei that was used to kill the people of the Feathered Tribe and frame Mo Run had appeared at Peach Blossom Springs. This confirmed them. Yeah. Li Zhuangzhu, may I have a look? Li Wuxian. Mo Run has it. Thank you, Anna. Li Wuxian mulled it over. Things weren't exactly going his way right now, and it'd be inadvisable to offend Chu Wanning further. After a moment's consideration, he said, Chu Zongshe is too courteous. I'm only here to inquire about the situation in the first place. Please look all you want. Why should I ever refuse? I'd be only too thrilled to get your thoughts. Zhang, for his part, was rather less than thrilled. He'd come to see Shung Peak to pick a fight and had spent a small fortune securing Bitan Manor's support. What was this damnable old fart playing at? Was he really going to switch sides after facing a little pushback? Zhang threw pointed look after pointed look at Li Wuxian, until eventually each one was an angry glare. Li Wuxian paid him no heed, but Mo Ran noticed those looks from where he stood on the side. Zhang, he said mockingly, are your eyes okay? You seem to be squinting them quite a lot. Meanwhile, Chu Wanning had taken the willow vine from the box and was now examining it closely. Sure enough, although it was no different from Tianwen and Jiangwei in appearance, its life force was exceedingly weak, far weaker than that of a holy weapon with a master. This was clearly a dead thing. Heartpluck willow. Shuimeng had keen ears, and when these words reached them, he froze. What? This vine, and the ones used to kill the Feathered Tribe back at Peach Blossom Springs as well. They were all broken off the Heartpluck willow, Chu Wanning replied. Duh, Shimei cried out in surprise. So that's what it is? Before the old dragon passed at Jincheng Lake, he said the fake Go Chen employed a certain spell that required a strong wood elemental spirit to maintain. It's likely that he took some branches from the holy tree before destroying Jincheng Lake. Although their spiritual power will gradually fade with the death of the holy tree, they should still be sufficient for his purposes for some time. Great! Delightful. Chu Wanning's slender fingers traced the golden leaves on the vine in his hand. Even the branches that have been practically depleted of spiritual power have not gone to waste. He has used them either as false evidence to frame others or distributed them to his puppeteered pawns as weapons. As he spoke, a flame kindled to life in his hand. He held that vine that was the mirror image of Tianwen to the fire, and it caught instantly, its blaze reflected in the shocked and stupefied eyes of the onlookers. This is not my weapon. Chu Wanning let the fire lick all the way up to the tip of the branch before closing his palm around the flame, extinguishing it. He tossed the scorched willow vine aside and said, mildly, Tianwen is possessed of abundant spiritual energy, even Samadhi true fire. Footnote, Couldn't hope to burn it, much less an ordinary fire spell such as this. Samadhi True Fire is a fire ability or technique that often appears in Chinese classical literature and Taoist culture, most notably with Hong Hai and Journey to the West. It is a type of powerful fire that is not easily extinguishable by ordinary water. Li Wuxian opened his mouth, then closed it, but in the end he refused to back down so easily and opened it again. I, too, have heard about this incident at Peach Blossom Springs. Word has it that Xisheng Peak's Mo Gongzhe murdered the great immortal lord of the Feathered Tribe. Oh, I didn't kill anyone. Moran raised his hands defensively. Shui Zhengyang, visibly displeased, was unyielding on this matter. As I've already explained to the other sex, this was not my nephew's doing. Li Zhongzhi, the next time you bring it up, I won't be so polite. His reaction seemed to stir some memory in Moran's mind. He stilled, and a flicker of something indiscernible flashed through those habitually smiling eyes. Uncle, he muttered. The incident at Peach Blossom Springs was a setup, said Chu Wanning. The situation was chaotic, and I was afforded no opportunity to defend my disciple's innocence. But today, since Bitan Manor has come all this way seeking the truth, I will certainly tell you the whole tale. Scene break. We are on page 47. In the wavering candlelight of the lamps, Chu Wanning offered a concise summary of the events of Jincheng Lake and Peach Blossom Springs. By the time he finished, the disciples of Bitan Manor were stunned, speechless, and Li Wuxian was sweating so profusely that his clothes were soaked through. He dithered for a while, then asked, "Does Chu Zongshi mean to say that there's someone in the world at this very moment who has mastered one of the 3 forbidden techniques, the Zhenlong chess formation?" "That is correct." "But how can that be? It's a forbidden technique. Even the leader of the Ru Feng sect, first in the cultivation world, would be hard-pressed to acquire the scroll for such a thing." Chu Wanning cut him off. "I have spoken nothing but the truth. Whether you believe or not is up to you." "Impossible," Li Wuxian insisted, his face pale. He guffawed loudly through trembling lips, as if by doing so he could convince himself this was an unfortunate joke. If there's really someone out there who has mastered the Zhenlong chess formation, the world will be thrown into disarray. Everything in the upper and lower cultivation realms alike is in danger of being rewritten. Ex-Emperor Tianjun was a little miffed. Wow, classifying him as ex-Emperor Tianjun. That guy only knows it. He hasn't mastered it. If he had, would things still be so peaceful now? Li Wuxian's whiskers quivered, and he had just opened his mouth to retort when a sword flashed in through the door. A Bitan disciple, clothes bloody, stumbled off it. The disciple coughed up a mouthful of blood before raising his tear-streaked face to Li Wuxian. "Zhuangzhu," he cried, "it's terrible. The barrier you erected around Butterfly Town has shattered. Vicious spirits rushed out, and my seniors used their own bodies to block the spirits' escape, but my Shishang, all 30 of them who were guarding the barrier, sacrificed themselves to hold back the ghosts. Only I was left to bring the news." He drew in deep, shuddering breaths, then raised his voice in a piteous wail. "Zhuangzhu, hurry, notify all the sects of the upper cultivation realm. Every dead soul in that town is being controlled. It's a forbidden technique. A forbidden technique." "What?" Li Wuxian stumbled backward into a pillar, as pale and haggard as a corpse dumped from its coffin. "There's no way we can hold them off by ourselves." The disciple wept miserably, his tears washing the blood from his face. "Zhuangzhu," he suddenly noticed Shui Zhengyang and turned to grovel toward him as well. "Shui Zhengmen, I'm begging, please come too. All of my Shishang. How can I face them?" He rambled incoherently for a few more seconds, then closed his eyes and howled at the sky in grief. They're all dead." The hall was deathly silent for a beat. Then it burst into an uproar. Shui Jingyong was ever level-headed in the face of disaster. He immediately directed Madame Wang to send messages to the remaining 8 great sects of the upper cultivation realm and put Shui Meng in charge of gathering the elders. Chu Wanning, Shui Jingyong turned to him next. There's no time to waste. I'll go first. But you don't know how to ride swords. Before Chu Wanning could reply, Mo Run rushed over, eager to meet the so-called master of Zhenlong chess formation. Don't worry, uncle. I'll take Shizun. Chu Wanning cast him a glance, but said nothing. Silent assent. The two strode out of the hall side by side. Okay. Draw a picture for me. Shimei stood frozen in place for a long moment, face pale, before snapping out of it and saying, Me too. But by the time he ran outside Loyalty Hall, they were gone. Shui Jingyong called him back and told him not to run off alone. All Shimei could do was go after Shui Meng and wait to leave with the second group. As for Bitan Manor, Li Wuxian had lived his life in luxury. Never once had he run into anything as big as this, but the old fart still wanted to save face. Of course. He drew in a deep breath to collect himself, then set about giving instructions. He had someone care for the messenger disciple and others contact the elders of his own sect, gathering his forces in hopes of making a good showing at Butterfly Town and thereby regaining some dignity. The assembly set off from Xisheng Peak in force, rushing across the sky toward Butterfly Town like hundreds of shooting stars. From where Li Wuxian stood on his sword at the head of the fleet as they flew through the woods, he couldn't resist stealing a sidelong glance at the disciples of the foremost sect of the lower cultivation realm. Never had he expected to one day march into battle alongside such riffraff, the very people he had looked down upon all his life. For a moment, his feelings were rather complicated. Traveling by swift sword, the group traversed 1,000 miles in a blink. Soon the clouds before them parted to reveal a stream of bloody demonic light shooting straight up toward the sky, and Li Wuxian had no more thought to spare for matters of the upper or lower cultivation realm. Yeah, it's like none of that fucking matters when shit hits the fan. You know? It's like, who cares? Who cares? Floating in midair was an enormous glimmering array of crimson light, the length and breadth of the town itself, delineated neatly into the checkered squares of a chessboard. Oops. On that chessboard, like so many carved figurines, hovered the silhouettes of the dead townsfolk. 500 households, over 1,000 souls, hanging in the air like a dense forest of human flesh. We're back to... Oh, you know who I'm thinking of. You very easily know who I'm thinking of. You're wrong. Yeah. Li Wuxian cried out despite himself. It really is Zhenlong chess formation. Shui Jingyong, his expression dark, turned to the Bitan Manor leader. Li Zhuangju, I'll take my people to the southeast side, but we'll have to trouble you to handle the northwest. We must hold out till the other sects arrive. There were more pressing matters at hand than Shui Jingyong's presumptuous use of we, so Li Wuxian merely nodded. Got it. Shui Jingyong cupped his fist in his hand respectfully, then led the disciples of Xisheng Peak out of the clouds to alight on the southeast side of Butterfly Town. The defensive barrier that Bitan Manor's disciples had bled and died for was nigh on the verge of collapse, the field of its spiritual energy weakening by the minute. Beyond the translucent barrier roamed masses of walking corpses. Chuaning, Shui Jingyong caught sight of a man standing before the barrier in fluttering white robes beside a figure in silver blue light armor. What's the matter? He called out. Is the barrier irreparable? Chu Wanning had been on the scene for some time. The number 1 zongsha of barriers was standing right there. Shui Jingyong couldn't understand why this one was still in such a sorry state. But his calls raised no response. Shui Jingyong was about to try again when Mo Run turned and gestured for him to be silent. Uncle, shh, come over here. Shui Jingyong walked over. What is it? Don't disturb him. Mo Run pointed at Chu Wanning. Although he stood straight and tall, his eyes were closed and his palms were pressed together before his chest, his lips completely colorless. Shui Jingyong started. He reached out to feel for a pulse at the side of Chu Wanning's neck, then asked in alarm, Soul projection? Yeah, it's all ghosts in there, a couple thousand of them. But we couldn't find Lo Shen Shen, so she's probably farther into town. We don't know what's happening yet, or what that guy is plotting, so he went to ask Lo Shanshen. The girl is already a vicious ghost gone berserk. What's there to ask? Shui Jingyong smacked his own thigh in anger. Reinforcing the barrier is more important right now. Don't, Moran said sharply. Shizun temporarily cast his soul out using soul projection precisely because it's all dead people in there. This way he can slip in without alerting the enemy. If we reinforce the barrier now, he'll be killed. What? Shui Jingyong exclaimed, panicked. Stay right here and keep an eye on him. I'll go tell Li Wuxian. Moran nodded. I'll send up a blue signal as soon as Shizun's soul returns. Then we can start mending the barrier from all directions. But before that, Uncle, you must under no circumstances allow them to mend it. If they do, the thousands of ghosts will go into a frenzy. Shizun is just a bodiless soul in there. He won't be able to defend himself. I know already. Before he'd even finished his reply, Shui Jingyong had already sped away toward Li Wuxian. Moran raised his eyes to look at that barrier on the brink of failure. We're running out of time. Moran turned and spoke to him in a low voice. You must have found Lo Shanshen by now, right, Shizun? In his worry, Moran reached out without thinking to close his warm hand around Chu Wanning's ice-cold one. Just a little longer. It was then that Shimei touched down nearby with Shui Meng and the rest. When he looked up from the crowd, he was greeted by the unexpected sight of the pair before the barrier, hands entwined. He froze, and the color drained from his face. He bit down on his lip and slowly turned his head away. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. All right. That was the end of the chapter. We have I can't even read. We're on page 53. For chapter 93, which is called This Venerable One Shizun. Who dares touch? Who dares touch this Venerable One's Shizun? It's very Yoda of him. All right, hang on. It's 5. I just need to, please be short. Please be short. It's pretty short. Okay, so this will probably be, because it's 5:12, and we're going a little longer today because we got a late start, but this should be the last chapter of the day. Okay? Oh, I'm not tense. You're tense. Okay. Chu Wanning's living soul roamed inside the barrier. Wherever he went, he found wandering ghosts in the shadows of lost souls. But the truly peculiar thing was the mangled corpses. The heart of each and every one had been dug out before death. Their chests were empty, some with arteries and pieces of flesh dangling outside the hollow cavity, others with the white bones of their rib cage plainly visible. That evokes a very specific image. From Volume 2, that I didn't really want to see evoked anywhere else ever again. But here we are. Don't like it, makes me nervous. Chu Wanning knew something was amiss here, but the defensive barrier around Butterfly Town was growing weaker by the moment, and he could not afford to tarry. He sped toward the Chen Manor. I'm too excited. When he arrived, he found 4 cauldrons, each half the height of a man, placed outside the Chen Manor in the 4 cardinal directions. Increasingly dense fumes poured from each cauldron in hues of red, blue, brown, and gold, rather than the typical white. Fires were lit under all 4 cauldrons, and each was filled to the brim with blood. Once he drew closer, Chu Wanning found that beneath the roiling blood were piled masses of red flesh. Human hearts. Here were the hearts that had been ripped from the bodies of the deceased. The cauldrons were stuffed full of them. Sand, I turned the page at the right time, right? I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking frazzled. Yeah. Sand amassed into a tower. That comes with a footnote, what Chu Wanning just said. Many grains of sand, when amassed, become a tower. Oh, a proverb meaning that many small things accumulate to make one large thing. Here, it is the name of a technique. Oh! Sand amassed into a tower, Chu Wanning muttered to himself. He suddenly understood why, even after searching for many weeks, they had found no track nor trace of what that person's pursuit of that person's pursuit of the spiritual essence. To think that lunatic would go this far. This so-called sand amassed into a tower was a technique whereby the hearts of hundreds of people possessing the same elemental essence were dug out and collected together. The resultant power, bolstered by the resentment of the dead, while not so strong as that of a true spiritual essence, would still be substantial for a short amount of time. But why Butterfly Town? Why Lo Shen? Chu Wanning stepped into the Chen Manor, its courtyards and halls in disarray, and its contents and furnishings strewn across the floor. There he found Landlord and Madame Chen swinging from the ceiling beams, both relieved of their hearts as well. However, unlike the townspeople outside, they had not reanimated, for obvious reasons. Both bodies had been shredded to ribbons from the waist down by some savage force, and the mutilated mess no longer bore even a passing resemblance to legs. Chu Wanning made a circuit through the main hall, but did not find Lo Shen. He proceeded farther in. Within the Chen family's ancestral shrine room, he spied a bowl of ground meat set before each and every memorial tablet as if an offering. A closer inspection revealed half an eyeball mixed into the meat and a segment of a finger. You know, you've seen Sweeney Todd. Feeling bile rise in his throat, Chu Wanning made to leave when a burst of crisp laughter skittered down from above. Nobody fucking move. His eyes snapped up. The white paper lanterns swayed as the candles within flared to life one by one. Lo Shen sat on a ceiling beam, dressed in vivid red wedding robes, and dangling a pair of bare feet as delicate as jade. She rocked gently back and forth, cocking her head as she contemplated Chu Wanning. She giggled. "Uh-oh, you found me." She looked no different from before. But behind that gleeful expression, her soul was nothing like the bashful girl Chu Wanning had met back then. Her eyes were yet large and round, but they now flickered a demonic crimson, arrogant and unbridled, blazing like a flame. Lo Shen had become a demon. Tian Wen could interrogate a ghost but once, and Chu Wanning had already done so when he'd come to Butterfly Town to exorcise evil the first time. It wouldn't work on her again. All he could do now was suppress the demonic nature within her soul, call back her original consciousness, and attempt to speak to her then. "Lo Shen, why are you here?" As Chu Wanning spoke, the hand hidden in his sleeve was already preparing to unleash a spell. "Because I feel like it," the petite girl spat. "Not that it's any business of yours." Chu Wanning shook his head, his brows knitted so tight it looked like a scar had been carved between them. "They're in the offering bowls. Is that Chen Bohuan's younger brother?" "Oh, him." Lo Shen spoke as if she couldn't care less. "Only the row on the left. The row on the right is that little Yao bitch." Chu Wanning stared at her in shock. "So many men in the world, and she had to steal my husband, just 'cause she's the governor's daughter. Getting chopped into mincemeat is no more than she deserves." Lo Shen was too far gone. Her present temperament bore no resemblance to her manner in life, nor could she recognize the man before her as the Yenlogaga who had once fought to exonerate her. "I'm going to throw things." What the fuck is this opening of a volume? Jesus Christ. Upon hearing that Madame Chenya had met the same... Hang on. I'm at the right... I am. Okay. Upon hearing that Madame Chen Yao had met the same fate, Chu Wanning's heart sank. Then, in a low voice, he pressed on. "The young daughter of the Chens. She was kind to me. I wouldn't treat her poorly." Lo Shen smiled, her lips a vibrant red, as if painted with blood. She rubbed her belly and said gaily, "That's why she's in here. I ate her. Now little sis will always be with me, and no one will bully her." "You've gone truly mad." A blinding light burst to life in his palm as he spoke, the flash of golden brilliance illuminating the dark corners of the room in an instant. Lo Shenshen yelped in surprise as Chu Wanning leapt up and flung a curse unerringly onto her forehead. Demonic screeching filled the room. Chu Wanning wasted no time. In seconds, he had summoned 10 golden chains to bind her. He pressed the tips of white and slender fingers to the center of her brow, his eyes flickering with fire and lightning, expression dark as thunderous clouds. His thin, pale lips parted slightly as he wordlessly chanted an incantation. Lo Shenshen's eyes bulged and saliva dripped from the corner of her mouth. Her once pretty face twisted into terrifying shapes under the power of the chanting. "Shut up! Let me go! Blood for blood! I've done nothing wrong!" Chu Wanning paid her no heed, eyes cool and downcast as the light at his fingertips shone brighter and brighter. She began to shriek hysterically. "Let me go! Let me go! My head hurts! It hurts! I can't take it anymore!" She screamed and wailed, then suddenly stopped. A sinister crimson lit her eyes, and the corners of her lips quirked eerily upward. She snickered softly. "Is that what you were hoping to hear?" Oh, fuck me! Startled, Chu Wanning yanked his hand away and leapt backward, his phoenix eyes widening. There was a flurry of white. He dodged Lo Shenshen's soul-shattering strike just in time, the silk of his robes settling gently around him as he landed some distance away on the veranda. Lo Shenshen straightened slowly, her faked agony of seconds ago nowhere to be seen. The purification spell hadn't affected her in the least. If anything, she seemed even stronger than before. "Did you really think a measly purification spell could do me in?" Lo Shenshen sneered. "I've devoured the life force of more than 1,000 people in this town. I'm on the cusp of cultivating a body of flesh, and then when I have it, I'll take my husband back from the underworld, and we'll leave this place, never to be parted again. How could I possibly let you ruin it for me when I'm so close?" The Lo Shenshen of before was gone. All she knew now was her desire to be forever with Chen Bohuan. An idea occurred to Chu Wanning. In a low voice, he asked, "Who told you that you could cultivate a body in this way?" Who do you think? 2 guesses. The first one doesn't count. What's it to you? Whoever it was, he lied, Chu Wanning replied coldly. Your original body is no more. The only way to acquire another is through the cycle of reincarnation. Achieving rebirth by consuming the life force of 1,000 people, there is no such thing. He tricked you into slaughtering the townsfolk so that he could gather their hearts for his own ends. Lo Shenshen's eyes were wide with shock. Impossible! He wouldn't lie to me. Who is he? He's... She mumbled over and over. She clutched her head and shrieked, I don't know. I want a body. I want to live. I don't want to die. He didn't lie to me. You're the one who's lying. That's right. You're the one lying. With a swirl of red silk, the ghost rushed toward Chu Wanning, claws extended. Just then, an ominous boom thundered from the skies above. Chu Wanning dodged Lo Shenshen's attack and looked up to discover a long, narrow crack in the defensive barrier, which could no longer stand before the overwhelming, resentful energy of the town. The life energy of those outside seeped in through the gap, and all throughout the town came the roars of the undead. The barrier was about to break. He was out of time. If he didn't recover Lo Shenshen's consciousness soon, he would have no choice but to kill her. And with her, their last lead. No pressure. That's a scene break. We're on page 58. Outside the barrier, Li Wuxin stared up at the horrifying crack in midair. Are we still not mending the barrier? He yelled at Shui Zhengyang. We gotta start repairing it. If it breaks and 1,000 walking dead rush out at once, there's no way we can hold them all back. Just a little while longer. Shui Zhengyang was similarly grim, and large droplets of sweat beaded on his forehead. Don't mend it just yet. Yu-Heng is still inside. Wait just a little while longer. Li Wuxian cursed under his breath. His heart beat wildly at the sight of that barrier, cracked like an egg. He snarled, If the barrier fails, how much blood do you think will be spilled? How will you answer to the entire cultivation world then? He whipped around to bellow at his disciples. Have the calls for aid been sent? When will the other sects arrive? The disciple handling the messages was drenched in nervous sweat. The other 8 great sects all said this is a serious matter that must be reported to their respective sect leaders first and foremost. The sect leaders and elders will have to discuss it before any aid can be sent. I'm going to swallow the microphone. Now is the time for bureaucracy, really? I'd ask, well, then what the hell do you do in an emergency? But I think they just answered me. Nothing. Li Wuxian's face darkened further. What about Rufeng sect? Nangong Shenjiang has always been meddlesome. Surely he, of all people, isn't so spineless. As the disciple searched for words to respond, the communication talisman began to glow once more. He skimmed it quickly and announced, overjoyed, Rufeng sect is coming. They just sent word. They're sending people as we speak. Thank frickin' God. Jesus. My kingdom for leaders of a sect to do something. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, a wall of blue clouds appeared on the horizon. As they drew closer, those watching saw that these were not clouds at all, but a drove of nearly 1,000 cultivators, each clad in a blue mantle emblazoned with Rufeng sect's heron and soaring through the sky on swords aligned in strict formation. Oh, the cavalry's here. Gandalf is breaking over the hillside. At their head were Nangongsi and Yuangshe. Yuangshe is, the man, right? I'm 99% certain that's his name. Nangongse rode astride his Fey Wolf, now by Jin, a jade bow on his shoulder and a full quiver across his back. He had an imposing air about him, the arrogance and intemperance of youth writ clear on his face. Yuangshe was dressed all in black, as before. With a cloak embroidered with Rufeng's heron thrown over top, he looked 7 parts handsome, 3 parts beautiful. I'm writing that down when I'm not about to spin out of control. What is this? Nangongse saw the sorry state of the barrier and promptly blew his top. His furious gaze scanned the crowd, skipping right over every person from the lower cultivation realm, Xisheng Peak, to land on the only individual remotely fit to be addressed by him, the leader of Baton Manor. Li Wuxian, do you not see that crack in the barrier? What are you doing just standing around down here? Don't you know how to mend it? Li Wuxian and Nangongse's senior... I'm too excited. Li Wuxian was Nangongse's senior by a long shot, but Nangongse was the sole heir to the foremost sect in the cultivation world. Oh no. Li Wuxian could only grin and bear it, even as his entire face flushed red at the admonishment. Young Master Nangong, I must inform you that the barrier remains in disrepair only at Shui Zhengmen's insistence. And with that, the hot potato was tossed to Shui Zhengyang. Xisheng Peak? Nangongse glanced at Shui Zhengyang and let out a humph, perhaps of contempt. Maybe it's contempt. Who can say? It's a mystery. He waved a hand and turned to his personal attendant. Go patch up the shitty pot. All this yammering had me thinking it was something serious. Yuangshe tried to stop him. Young master. But Nangongse wouldn't spare him so much as a glance. Even stranger, Song Chutong had come as well. Her face was obscured behind a veil of white silk and her eyes were downcast, as demure and obedient as ever, but today she stood beside Nangongse rather than Yuangshe. Oh, really? Rufeng sect was nothing if not expeditious, and they obeyed none but their own leaders. This was especially true of the personal attendants of Nangongse. The group of them stepped up in sync, completely ignoring any attempt at explanation, and immediately set about laying down the seals and arrays to mend the barrier. Wait! Shui Zhengyang interrupted 4 or 5 people's attempts in succession, yet when he turned around, another had already formed the mending seal and sent it flying in a streak of blue light toward the crack in the barrier. The blood drained from Shui Zhengyang's face. Yuheng! There was a sudden bang, and sparks flew. In the breath before the seal reached the crack in the barrier, it was cleaved in two by a flash of crimson, like a bolt of bloody lightning. All heads snapped up to see a young man standing on his sword in midair before the barrier, a length of willow vine in his hand. His features were bright and friendly, as if naturally bathed in warmth, but at this moment his eyes were sharp and unyielding, his gaze flaring like the leaves of the vine in his hand, coursing with a light the scarlet of blood and erupting with sparks. High above them, Mo Run's brows were drawn low in a frown. Didn't I fucking say that no one is to touch this barrier? He asked darkly. Tell me, are you deaf or stupid? He may have loathed Chu Wanning, but that was between the two of them. Be it in his past life or this one, on pain of death, he would never permit anyone but himself to touch so much as a hair on Chu Wanning's head. He'd said it before. Only he was allowed to kill the one he hated. The only one allowed to ruin him, to torment him. In his fit of rage, the savagery of his past life reared its head, bleeding through into his demeanor in a stark departure from his usual attitude of a playful and easygoing young master. Shui Jungyong, Shui Meng, and even Shimei were taken aback, to say nothing of the disciples of Rufeng's sect. Oh my God. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the that's the end of the chapter. It's 5:30. I gotta go. Oh no. God damn it. What the fuck is this volume? What is it? I don't understand. We started this volume with that scene that finally landed on our heads. And then so much other shit happened. And now we're here with, oh God. Oh no. Oh no. Jesus Christ. All right. For future reference, we're stopping on page 63 at chapter 94, which is called This Venerable One Sees the Heavenly Rift Again. Fuck me. All right. Holy damn. Just damn. I mean, that's gotta go down as one of the best, sections that we've covered in a stream, right? That had so much. There was a bath scene. There was, hang on. All right. And we got like 50 pages, bang on. Holy shit. Yeah, no, we had baths. We had a amazing freaking Chu Wanning being a boss-ass bitch and revealing the fact that he was trying to be framed. We had fucking the creepy-ass shit from the start of this whole attack on the rip. The fake Go Chung is back. We're like literally directly dealing with the whole new glow-up of the Zhenlong chess formation that apparently isn't even mastered yet. What is happening? So, catch us on Thursday at 3 p.m. Sharp. Much sharper than today's 3 p.m. Actual 3 p.m. We'll be here on Thursday at 3 p.m. from 3 to 5 to continue reading Volume 3 of Erha. Chill. Very chill volume. Really relaxed vibes. I'm just eased all the tension right out my shoulders. Holy shit. What a way to kick off the new year of reading streams. I tell you what, this was a time, but also a real damn blast. But also a time. I hope you had as much fun as I had, because, oh my God. I'll see you on Thursday. I love you guys so much. It's so good to see you again, and it's so good to be doing this again. Like, I underestimated, just the healing and excitement. I finally sat down to go live, and, it all hit me. And then all of this happened. So I will see you guys on Thursday to continue a brand new year of whatever the shit these reading streams are. I love you very, very much. And please, now more than ever, take care of yourselves.